Overwatch's biggest titans, Crazy Raccoons, just got upset by an EU team. But how? So be it. Imagine you're a team with a legacy, always finishing on the podium, and then you get knocked out on your own map 5 against an underdog. I'm sure you'd crash out. So get ready for some insane TPs, dogshit comps that I'm gonna flame, and an unexpected counter that we briefly saw. What better place than to start with the Thanos of Overwatch, Ramattra. There's two central things I want to get across here. Firstly, he's incredibly good at disrupting dive pressure and forcing the enemy team to make a bad move. And secondly, he's practically unkillable, kinda like that Raiden Armstrong meme. Again, you'd know this if you watched my last video. This just means that he can zone for a long time and force point forever. That first idea is obvious to see when Ramattra pops the vortex onto Jumpin while his Sim and Cassidy TP and push onto him too. Being proactive in disrupting dives isn't anything new, shout out the London Spitfire. But it's so important to do because it stops Jumpin from being able to dive in the first place, allowing Twisted Minds to rotate all the way around. This isn't the first time either. The second KSA lands a good vortex onto Jumpin, it shuts the staging down entirely and almost guarantees him to waste bubble. To be fair, Jumpin is kinda throwing by playing Winston. Still though, maybe Winston isn't as bad as that War of Worlds movie. Ram's Invincibility also allow him to play basically alone, draw all the aggro away from his Symmetra, creating space for her to walk. Look at the clean setup here. KSA is alone forcing points while the rest of his team are playing very far back. The second the cart reaches the bridge and Jumpin feels forced to touch the point, UB TPs the other side, playing underneath and eventually popping the wall to force the point even harder. If KSA was playing a less tanky tank, he would have at least gone and forced out. And UB is able to TP safely because of that distance. Jumpin just can't leap in and force a TP early. The exact same idea still applies, even when Crazy Raccoons are playing a much better comp. The Chad, Ball, Venture, Frere can all heavily punish Twisted Minds when they do actually TP. Burrow, Baller and Ball Slam will fuck you up. This is unlike the Virgin Winston, who has to play like a pussy because he's just too squishy. Take this fight here. Twisted Minds get absolutely fucked the second they TP, in part because Lip's bowler shots were putting in serious dents the entire match. But look at how Twisted Minds adapt in the fight after. This time, they only send their Ram through the TP. This baits Heesang to commit both his Venture cooldowns, and it baits Jumpin to engage with his grapple too. KSA's not done there though. He charges forward with his Annihilation and Vortex, putting even more pressure that forces Shoot to window. So far, KSA has taken more aggression than Keemstar has in his entire career, allowing his team to walk forwards. Now, one of the most important ideas when playing into dive is deciding when to clear or out-rotate an angle. Even when KSA draws all the aggro, UB can't walk forward yet because the Venture and Ball haven't been cleared yet and there's a window. As a result, he sets a TP backwards in his spawn to out-rotate the Ball and Venture. In terms of clearing, he can't really clear the Brig Venture on top because he'll get bashed and dashed. Even in the very first fight that we saw, UB's TP wasn't just to help force out Jumpin on the Winston, it was also to out-rotate Heesang on the Pharah. From a top-down view, you can see that, just like my dad, Heesang is very far away and is practically in a different country. This is also why the TP Miner perk is low-key kinda broken. Speaking of TP, one thing I didn't mention in my previous sim video was just how much Twisted Minds love the TP Quartz. This was the best way of clearing angles. TP Quartz in, he goes and kills something, and then he eventually TPs out, keeping both his power slides. Now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, Crazy Raccoon's shit performance. This was in two ways. The comps were shit, and they played like shit. I've already covered Jumpin's Winston. In fact, I'm just gonna show the Virgin meme again. Hazard, Ball or Doomfist would have been a lot better, but more on that later. Raccoon's also played Pharah. Unfortunately, she's too slow to respond to sim TPs and struggles to get close. But the real kicker was Chorong's Brig on Blizzard Worlds.
That shit is a 2-pack of ass!
I might even go off script for this because what the fuck is Brig supposed to do into Sim Ram? It's even crazier because 2 years ago, we saw the exact same thing, playing Brig into a Sim comp on the exact same map. And guess what happened to that team? Clearly, the Koreans need to watch Breaking Bad, so they
never make the same mistake twice.
In fairness, while you could go Zen and melt Ram, something you would have seen in my last video, Keisei can just go Diva, but I'd rather that than play Brigand to Ram Sim. Still, it's not just the comps, it's also how they play. In this fight, Jumbin tries to pole drive, but gets stunned out by Quartz. This becomes a big issue for Lip because now he's completely vulnerable during his bowler shots. There's no ball player acting as the distraction. Just for the cherry on top, Chorong decides to rally in while both of his DPS are dead. Shit was less intimidating than me in a Diva cosplay. Now, there was one part of Crazy Raccoons that also failed. He sang Sombra. You'd think that having EMP would be a slam dunk fight into a Juno Iliari backline, but you'd be wrong. The fight starts well for Crazy Raccoons as Lip picks off Simple, but Quartz avenges him, getting the trade. Still, the spawn advantage is working for the Sombra team. It's actually Keisei's proactiveness to force out Jumbin, coupled with Astro's early Ray, that disrupts Heesang from getting into a good position for his EMP. However, for some reason, Chorong flies over, popping his own orbital ray. But because Twisted Minds are flipping forwards, Crazy Raccoons have zero angles during their ray. Even worse, Heesang walks forward and pops EMP before his Winston can jump in.
Are you serious?
He doesn't even catch the Juno or the Cassidy because they're playing distance. In fairness, Yubi does end up going down, but not before he catches Heesang. Now, one thing I've never heard anybody mention about Symmetra is her binary nature. In other words, she can go from defensive to aggressive in the flick of a switch. Take a non-binary hero like Venture, no pun intended. It takes time for Venture to actually engage, and you can picture it like a sliding scale. Comparatively, with Symmetra, you kinda flicker between the two ends instead of sliding between them. The reason why this is broken is because you can push advantages very quickly, catch teams off guard, and be very hard to telegraph. This couldn't be clearer with the TP high noons that all the EU teams love to do. Again, look at the distance the Simcast have from the Winston. It's pretty defensive and it makes Jumbin's jump, as well as Heesang's burrow, very telegraphed and predictable. The second that Winston goes in with the beat, you can see the TP high noon on the other side. Quartz actually goes back through to get a better angle, and just with one TP, they not only avoided the dive, but immediately became aggressive off it too. This doesn't even have to be with high noons, just any advantage you can quickly push. For example, if Jumbin has to use both his cooldowns to live, and Heesang is busy borrowing out, that is the perfect opening for an aggressive sim TP. I talked about ping pong TPs in my last video, and this is also where that becomes important. Back on Colosseo in the very first fight, Jumbin yet again has no bubble, so Yubi can TP through and push that advantage because nobody can fight this TP any longer. Sometimes though, even if Winston can fight your TP, you can minimize the impact. We saw how that was done earlier by just sending the Ramattra through. Sure, you can fight the Ramattra, but who cares, he's basically immortal. The second way is through split TPs. Take this example here. Only the Sim, Cass and Iliari take the TP, leaving the Diva and Juno main. If Jumbin jumps and fights the Sim TP, which he does end up doing, he's leaving his team vulnerable to the Diva Juno on the front, both of whom get the final blows. Simple can also just avoid the Winston with Captive Sun, and Cass can break the bubble super easily. In short, you can fight the Sim TP, but when somebody can fly over it, and you've got an uncontested angle on the other side, it's pretty hard to win. Of course, other important TPs were just stopping the staging from Crazy Raccoons. Before the TP, you can see the 3 different angles that Twisted Minds have got to deal with, but by flipping the map, there's only one. As a result, the squishy Juno Kiri backline is under no pressure, and it's super easy for KSA to just force the point and force out the ball Venture. As for perks, nothing crazy to mention. I've only started to realize how good the shield battery is on Sim because you become a lot harder to force out. The only difference I saw was Quartz using the High Noon perk on Colosseo and the Quick Draw perk on Blizzard World, but on the whole, he tends to go for the High Noon perk. Before I continue, if you want to get my Spalo approved coaching, click the link down below. Now, there is a counter to the Ram Sim comp that could have changed the meta, which was Sign's desperate Doom Widow comp. Unfortunately, I don't have replay codes for the match, and OBS Sojourn doesn't have POVs either. But Doom Widow is legitimately a better comp to play into the Ram Sim than the Winston Farah Brig. Widow can both prevent Sim from getting a good TP and punish her after she places it down by simply getting the headshots. Obviously that's easier said than done, but when you're chronic, it's not a challenge. Doom also does a similar thing, slamming in and out to farm ult charge and your empowered punch. Then, when Sim drops her TP, you destroy all of them with an empowered punch. And, unlike Ball or Farah, you're quicker to the punch. No pun intended. The issue with Doom Sim is that it's very high risk, high rewards. If you don't hit your shots on Widow, or you fuck up your cooldowns on Doomfist, it's officially Jova. And Junkbuck, one of the most respected coaches ever, mentioned how hard it is to play Doomfist into D.Va. I do want to finish this video off by looking at the last fight, which, judging by the ult economy, is the equivalent of the hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby meme. Still, better to show than tell.
Jumping's down! It's a one-man advantage, they need to touch! Medi, Simple takes down Isung Churong as well! And Twisted Minds! They've done it!
Anyways, that's it for the video. The channel's been growing like crazy, so be sure to like and subscribe to join the wave, and click the video on screen if you enjoyed. Until next time.